Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to this first in the series of Innovate UK's Net Zero Living Programme Lunch and Learn webinars. The series of four webinars runs from today through to March 2026, and the series is showcasing the achievements and the learning from across the 7 Pathfinder demonstrator projects funded through Innovate UK's Net Zero Living Programme. Today is the first of the four. We hope you can join them all, and please do invite colleagues and partner organisations to join them as well. Next slide, please, Rain. My name is Dinah Jackson. I am a principal consultant at Urban Foresight and a programme manager supporting Innovate UK to deliver the Net Zero Living programme, and I'm your host for today's event. Thanks, Lorraine. So who are we? We are Innovate UK Urban Foresight working with our partner Liminal. Innovate UK is the UK's innovation agency. It runs the Net Zero Living programme, a national programme supporting net zero living transition across the UK. Urban Foresight is the community and knowledge sharing delivery partner for a capacity building service that has supported the 50 plus places on the Net Zero Living programme. We've worked for Innovate UK delivering a community of practice, an upskilling academy, insights and evaluation. This has been called the Future Ready service, and the service complements Innovate UK's direct project funding to the places involved. Our service is aimed to support the projects to move more quickly and with greater capacity and capability. We've delivered the community practice with our partner, We Are Liminal, and Liminal will be hosting the remaining webinars in this series. So that's January, February and March. Next slide, please. So today's webinar series, we're going to start in a minute with Sophie Randall. Sophie is the innovation lead at Innovate UK. Sophie will set the context for the series and will cover Innovate UK's Net Zero domain, the Net Zero Living programme, its Thriving Places competition and the scope of the demonstrator projects. We have 2 demonstrator projects speaking today. That's Rossendale and Bristol. They're both showcasing their work, their achievements and key learnings. Thank you to Andy Pinches from Rossendale Valley Energy and to Alex Ivory from Bristol City Council. We're then going to conclude with a short Q&A. But just to cover a few housekeeping points first, before Sophie kicks us off, we're delighted that you've joined us. People are saying hello in the chat. That's great. Please do continue to do that. There are a couple of aspects of housekeeping to note. We have a Q&A at the end of the presentations. We're using the Q&A function for that, so please direct any questions to the Q&A function, which is down in the bottom centre of your screen. We're recording this webinar. The recording will be uploaded to Innovate UK Business Connect's web pages. Please make yourself known to the hosts and panelists via the chat function if you've got any concerns about the recording, and we can work that out with you. Just in terms of today's session, to recap on the agenda, we are starting off with Sophie, who I'll hand over to in a second, to set the scene. And then we have Andy Pinches from Rossendale Valley Energy, followed by Alex Ivory from Bristol City Council to talk about the 2 demonstrator projects, Net Zero Terrace Streets in Rossendale and Mission Net Zero in Bristol. So I'm delighted now to hand over to Sophie, Innovate UK, to set the context for the remarkable work that has taken place over the last 3 years. Thank you, Sophie.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dinah. If we go on to the next slide. So perfect. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining today. As I've been introduced, my name is Sophie Randall. I'm the Innovation Lead for Mobility and Cities at Innovate UK. And I'm part of the wider team, which is supporting to run the Net Zero Living programme, which you'll hear a lot more about in a moment. Next slide, please. So just for those of you who don't know who Innovate UK are, we're part of UKRI, the UK Research Institutions, which also has 8 other research councils within it. And UKRI, we cover all aspects of research, development and innovation across a huge range of sector areas. And Innovate UK, we are the UK's innovation agency, and we support UK organisations to develop new products, services and processes. We go on to the next slide, please. So Innovate UK primarily works across 3 different domains. We have healthy living and agriculture, digital and AI, and net zero. Now, myself and the team working on the Net Zero Living programme obviously sit within the Net Zero domain. And our vision within the Net Zero domain is for the UK to prosper from being the fastest transitioning economy to net zero. And we understand that in order to do this, we will need to accelerate the demand for net zero solutions. We need to address the barriers to scaling those solutions, and we also need to create better and improved products that people and places both need and want. Next slide, please. So the net zero domain is split into 4 key sector areas. So we have heat, we have power, mobility, and manufacturing or make and use. The Net Zero Living team actually sit within the systems sector, and this is an overarching team that look across all technologies and try to act as an enabler to enable those technologies within the other key net zero sector areas. And I guess alongside that, we also need to consider that there is work going on in our Healthy Living and Agriculture team, because we also understand that net zero and sustainability challenges sit within their domain too. Next slide, please. So we are the urban systems team. You can see us here. We work to try and make sure that places, both urban and rural, are cleaner, healthier, more prosperous, more equitable, more sustainable, and more resilient. So we're really passionate about enabling technologies and innovation that support those ambitions. Next slide, please. So the Net Zero Living programme, the roots of that lie within PIFA, which was called Prospering from the Energy Revolution. And as part of that programme, that predecessing programme, there was a report published with PwC. And this report was looking at different approaches to decarbonisation measures. And it found that place-specific approaches to decarbonisation had much better outcomes than taking a place-agnostic approach. So it found that taking that place-specific approach, really considering the needs of a place and the unique aspects of a place, delivered overall cheaper to deliver net zero measures, but it also added a huge range of wider benefits, which can be seen in the bottom right of the slide. So this work essentially laid the groundwork for the Net Zero Living programme. We understood that local authorities, that places have a better understanding of what works in their area than what we do. And places also have that understanding of what needs to happen to enable the technology and that demand within their region. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, Net Zero Living, the programme, it's all about tackling the non-technological barriers to innovation. So there's been a huge amount of research through PIFA and through other programmes into what those barriers to technology uptake are. But you can see them down the right-hand side there. There's things around procurement, governance, citizen engagement, understanding digital and data, resource issues, the languages between local authorities and businesses. There's a huge range of barriers that we really want to address to be able to unblock and therefore unlock those net zero innovations, enable them to be adopted and scaled within a place. Next slide, please. So with that in mind, considering those barriers, they helped to develop the Net Zero Living programme. And ultimately, this programme is a 3-year-long programme. It ends in March of next year. £60 million, so a huge amount of money invested into this. And the programme, it is not about the technology. We know that the technology needed to decarbonise our local economies already exists. A lot of it is already there and present. But the challenge that we face is that deployment and adoption at scale, particularly from a local authority and place perspective. And that is where the innovation is needed. So the Net Zero Living programme, it's got a twofold focus, both improving the supply, so making what we do have better, but also tackling the demand and enabling that adoption of the technologies. So with those two programs, we've got the Thriving Places side of it, which is focused on providing local authorities with the support to innovate in overcoming those non-technological barriers. And I'll touch upon more about that in a moment. But looking at the supply side, so the right-hand side, that is all about user-focused products and supporting businesses to develop relevant products and services to develop the best outcomes on carbon reduction, to enable a fair and just transition. And within that, there are three strands of activity. Design foundations, which provide design support services and really help businesses to think about how they might redesign their product to improve and scale it. There is a digital accelerator, so that was all around supporting the development of digital products that can maximize data use in order to support on that net zero decision making. And lastly, there was an international aspect around that. So we looked at how cities can learn from each other and supporting each other and position the UK as that global leader of achieving net zero ambitions. But secondly, it was also around enabling UK businesses to scale globally. So we're using our other products such as incubators and bilateral programs to enable the UK businesses to take their products to other countries and enable them to grow and scale. Next slide, please. But what this series of webinars is all about, and the key interesting aspect for local authorities is all around the Thriving Places side. So with this, local authorities, they are perfectly positioned to transform their local economies in order to achieve net zero. They understand how their area works, they know what might work best, or they at least have that gut feeling about what they need to do to address net zero. And they're really well positioned to help to mobilise both public and private capital to enable those investment opportunities within net zero. But as we saw from the previous slides, there's a lot of barriers that they need to overcome. They have, there's a lack of capacity, there's issues with skills and resources. And so we really need to support places and local authorities with these aspects. So the Net Zero Living Programme, it offers targeted support in order to help build that capacity and capability in those places all across the UK to tackle the challenges, to share what can be done, prove what can be done and what doesn't work, and to share those experiences and speed up the journey from a national level as well. It's all about helping places to develop that process and that chart of delivery in order to learn from each other. And I guess just to point out that a lot of the learnings that we'll be developing from this programme will be shareable to other places. So we really want this programme that we've run and the learnings and outcomes from that to be available everywhere. So just to touch upon the three different strands of activity we have. So we've got funded cohorts, we've got over 50 places within that cohort, and that includes demonstrators, which you'll be hearing from later, pathfinders and fast followers, and they're all at different stages on their net zero journeys. And they formed a community of practice to ensure that they're learning from each other, to again be sharing those ideas, understand what does and doesn't work. We've also offered capacity building and upskilling to make sure that they have the resource within the local authorities to enable these actions and to move forward with their net zero journey. And we've also offered technical assistance through some partners, which I will touch upon a little bit more later. Next slide, please. So as a whole, the programme has been designed to support businesses to grow, whether that's through leveraged private investment, growth and employment, etc., really to support businesses, and from that supply side angle, and as well through the demand side. To level up communities across the UK, so we want to ensure that everyone in the UK benefits from that net zero transition and the positive outcomes that come from it, such as health improvements and reduced pollution benefits. We want to enable the UK to profit globally from that leadership position. So we want to be acting as that global leader from the net zero transition, but we want to also learn from other countries that are achieving similar ambitions or aiming for similar ambitions and learn from each other. And lastly, we want to get local delivery of net zero on track. So we have both national targets and local targets, and we really want to be working cohesively to achieve that, make sure that we're achieving both of those. Next slide, please. So yeah, I guess this is just a map that gives a really great visual example of all the places that we're working with across the UK. And you can see that it's all the way up in the Orkney and Shetland Islands, down to the Isle of Wight, working across all 4 nations, so England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. We've got local authorities in there, combined authorities, national parks, urban and rural areas. So we're really getting that range of experiences and a range of projects that we can showcase. Next slide, please. But if we just touch upon the demonstrators who you're hearing from today. So there are 7 places and they're all targeting those non-technological barriers. This is through things such as opening up finance routes, showing how residents can be engaged, delivering systems where planning goes to action, lots of different showcased examples. And within the demonstrators, we're also working really closely with the low carbon accelerator projects. So these are funded by DESNZ in the West Midlands and Greater Manchester combined authorities. So they're also part of that programme to make sure that we're getting the learnings across all of those places. Next slide, please. So we've got 7 demonstrators, as I mentioned. They've received between £2 to £5 million. And as part of the scope, we really wanted them to deliver a tangible impact in a place to show how they're taking a systems approach to addressing those non-technological barriers. There needed to be an active cohort member within our collective and needed to be within a collaborative consortium. So they're often working with businesses, academia, and charities to really share those learnings and to develop a more integrated project. Next slide, please. So just to touch upon the final deliverables from these projects, we've really asked for them to have something that's replicable, scalable, that we can share with others. And we've also asked them to compile a final report that shows the benefits that they've gained through their project, both from a national and local level, so that again can be shared with other local authorities and places to learn from. And finally, we've asked them for a plan of action in terms of moving forwards beyond the funding period to see what else they can do and what next. Next slide, please. So the future ideas are a package of support looking to work with the cohort and those 50 places to generate learnings and beyond. Urban Foresight and partners are working to convene that cohort, to build that community of practice and to facilitate the knowledge. And we've also utilised a number of technical assistance partners, which you can see on the right-hand side there, who have provided training, one-on-one support, and are really helping to build that collation of insights and learning that can also be shared further afield too. Next slide, please. So I've just popped this on. It's the online platform. It just gives you a visual of how those places are able to communicate with each other and where the resources are kept at present. So it's really offered them that chance to talk to each other, to share knowledge and to share resources as and when, and given them that safe place to communicate with each other. Next slide, please. And just lastly, to touch upon our events. So we also host events with those places. We've had annual events. We've had a number of quarterly closed events with just the cohort. And these have been all across the country, from Manchester to Ipswich to Blackpool to Edinburgh. And these have really been great in enabling that knowledge sharing and getting people together to really build that community and make sure that the net zero officers in different places don't feel isolated. They feel like they can talk to each other from and reach out to different places from across the country. Next slide, please. So there have been so many learnings from this program, lots of resources, and we really understand that places are stretched at the moment. So again, we just want to stress that these resources will be open access. We want to share them with places from all across the UK, those that have and haven't been part of the program, to make sure that everyone has access to understand what can be done and what might work for them. Next slide, please. So yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy hearing from the demonstrators, and I'll pass you back to Dina.
Thank you, Sophie. I will hand straight over to Andy Pinches from Rossendale Valley Energy, who will be speaking on behalf of the Rossendale project, Net Zero Terrace Street. Any questions that you want to ask of Sophie or of Andy whilst he does this talk, or Alex, who's going to follow them, please add them to the Q&A function. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Diana. I'll just take a slide straight on and put the get going. So yeah, I'm Andy. I'm here from Rossendale Valley Energy, here to talk to you this morning about the Net Zero Terrace Streets projects. If you want to move to the next slide. So I'll be running through what Net Zero Terrace Streets is, kind of the why, the how, etc. What the demonstrator project's doing and has been done, key learnings and the wider impact that comes out of that, and then kind of where we're at and what the next steps are. Can you move on to the next slide, please? I've introduced myself already. I was meant to be joined this morning by Natalie Whittam from Rossendale Borough Council, but unfortunately she's off sick today, so I'll be picking up the council side of this as well. But her contact details are there if you do need them. So, next slide, please. Why terraces? And I'm sure a lot of you on the call will know that there's a lot of them all across the country. You know, by our estimates, there's about 6 million across the country of pre-1919 terraces. You know, a lot of them mixed tenure. There's a lot of limited space, and you can see in the two pictures at the top there. You know, if you were looking at how you would decarbonise heat, looking at these properties. You know, the one on the left, you could maybe stick an air source heat pump in that yard, but it's very confined, it's very small. And a lot of them there, you know, you'll have bikes propped up against them, you'll have leaves sucked into them, they won't be running particularly efficiently. And, you know, in that very small courtyard, there may be noise issues as well. And then the terrace on the right, the back-to-backs, which we have quite a lot of in Rossendale, there's no space for air source heat pumps here at all. They're straight out onto the road and they have no outside space. And a lot of these properties, the only option they'll have when it starts coming to looking at the decarbonisation of heat will be electric boilers, which are really easy for, typically landlords to take off the wall gas boiler and stick an electric boiler on. Very easy. You don't need to think about fabric, but it's going to be costly and expensive to run for that individual. And then when it comes to looking at kind of the fabric measures and the heat measures, going down the individual route of grants, you know, is great for individuals that have the capacity and ability to do that. But it's piecemeal. You know, you have gaps in terraces. You can see them sometimes when EWI schemes, external wall insulation schemes, be put on, where you get that kind of copper potting where people are eligible for grants and some aren't, and some just can't deal with kind of that level of work in their property. So kind of a coordinated kind of whole systems, community focused approach is something that is what we're looking at as Zero Terrace Streets. So if you move on to the next slide, the idea essentially we came up with is looking at how you put in that decarb of heat. So we're looking at the shared ambient loop ground source heat pump that will go into the property. An array will go under the street, and each property will have an individual 5.8 kilowatt Kenta shoebox heat pump that will go in there with a hot water cylinder. On top of that, there'll be an optimized fabric retrofit package that will go in there. So we're looking kind of somewhat in reverse. So we're looking at resizing the heat pump at 5.8 kilowatts and then designing the fabric measures to sit around that, so that we're not going super deep retrofit to begin with, loads of disruption for the resident. We're kind of looking to balance that. So if we pre-size the heat pump, we can then kind of design that fabric optimally on each property. And then on top of all of that, we've got a smart local energy system that we're building in a separate project, but essentially the solar panels and batteries that go on the properties. Well, batteries where we can fit them. We're looking to put solar on the roofs that we can get them on there. But the smart energy system will look at how you can balance and aggregate kind of that local flexibility at that kind of super hyper local level. Like I said, that's kind of an aside in a separate project, but we're looking again at how you kind of overcome the smart gap of potentially moving on gas properties onto electric, and the smart system will help kind of bridge that gap, but it also gives kind of power back to local communities, so that they can essentially run that kind of aggregated system locally at a substation level. The idea with this again is to run a no upfront cost model. I'll touch on it briefly. I've only got 15 minutes, so we could talk forever about all of these, but the no upfront cost model looks at essentially looking to crowd in investment into the system, so nobody pays any upfront cost, and then it's paid back similarly to how you would pay back how you pay your standing charges currently for the gas and electric infrastructure. And as boreholes and the ground source heat pump, these new infrastructure that goes into the ground, you can look to debt finance that, roll up all of the fabric measures that we're putting in, the solar, all the engagement, etc. O&M that will sit on top of that onto that infrastructure, and then that can be paid back. And the idea is that the bill would meet any higher than what people are paying currently. There's a graphic later on. I'll touch more on that in a little while. But as part of this project, we've had 3 demonstrator properties that we've worked on to kind of test out kind of this solution. So you can move on to the next slide, please. So you can see them there. We've had 3 properties. 2 of them, mercifully, are in the same street. It was very difficult trying to get 3 in the same street, and then we've got 1 that's slightly further away, as a different archetype. So the first 2 are pretty similar, pretty identical, with the exception of one's got a small extension on the back, and the third one is a back-to-back and terrace. They've had a suite of different fabric measures put in. Some of them you can see listed there, and the designs kind of changes we went through, and it kind of was a bit of a slog getting them done, but they're looking really good, and we're getting some good data out of it that we need to have a good look at once the heating season kind of starts to come to an end. So I'll talk you through I've got some nice pictures for everybody of what we've done and how it's worked. So you move on to the next slide. First off, we had some space behind a couple of properties where we applied for a car park closure and a road closure, so that we could set up a kind of a fenced-off area to put all the things we need. On the right-hand side, that picture, you can see some water barrels and kind of the pumping system that's used for drilling boreholes. So that was all set up. Natalie could go into much more detail about how that worked from a council's perspective, but we managed to get it all in place and sorted. So while that was getting set up, if you move on to the next slide, we started work full in on the properties and looked at re-roofing and putting on brackets for the solar panels to go on. We had to re-roof each one of these properties. We went up and took a look, and I think that's probably going to be the case for quite a lot of these pre-1919 terraces, that when you start looking at solar panels and going to look at the roofs, that this is probably going to be something that needs to be pulled into cost estimates. So if you move on to the next slide, then the actual boreholes for the ground source heat pump were drilled. So there were 2 behind here, 1 for each property, 1 to a depth of 102 meters, 1 to a depth of 122 meters. So these were straight down boreholes, and not the ones that kind of lay kind of across the ground. So this was all all drilled. It's a lot quieter than I thought it was going to be. Still pretty loud, but it was not as kind of jarring as I thought it was, and it was I'd say relatively quick process. It still took a long time for them to do it, about a week or so for them to do both, but it was all it was all done and cleaned up and sorted. So once they drilled the boreholes, we move on to the next slide. This was connected up to putty. You can see it was trenched, and we laid the pipes from the borehole into the properties. And then if you move on to the next slide, the heat pump is there next to the washing machine. You can see the shoebox is a bit of a misnomer. It is a touch bigger than an actual shoebox, but it managed to fit in pretty easily into that putty. And then, as we mentioned on the next slide, there's kind of the fabric measures that we put in. There's hundreds of pictures of all of these. So a quick snapshot of just the roof, the rooming roof that we did having to extend the rafters in there to fit the specs insulation, and then the plasterboard insulated plasterboard that goes over the top. And then it's all obviously skimmed and looks really, 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 very nice now. And then on the next slide, we have the kind of crux of it all is the monitoring. So everything that we've kind of done and everything that's in there is we've got sensors for doors opening and closing, relative humidity, temperature sensors, so that we can get a good idea of what's going on in each room. These have been running for quite a long time, and as I said, now that everything's been installed in two of the properties, that we're waiting for build data, and kind of will that against kind of that monitoring data, so that we get a good idea of how the system's performing, and how much it's costing to run and how much it's saving, etc. So if you move on to the next slide, there's been some key learnings that have come out of it. Obviously, there's the issue of supply chain, which is always an issue with retrofit projects. There's also with this, there has been some lessons out of terms of sequencing of works, and how we've had these to kind of work on, but when we start going at scale, there'll be people living in them, and to be honest, two of the properties that we were working with had people living in at the moment. So we're learning as we're doing, and we'll continue to learn as to what's the best way to kind of sequence the works and get it all into a nice, neat package to move forwards, so that we're not disrupting people for too long. In terms of the surrounding area as well, there's a couple of surrounding businesses that, obviously when we were drilling boreholes and we were working on the properties, that they were interested, and they were asking about how long things were going to take, etc. So there's always kind of managing expectations on kind of the wider scope as well. We're focusing on terraces, but there may be people around that are interested in what's going on. Also, from a council perspective, there's kind of the alignment with planning, the planning teams, and highways and parking, etc. Rossendale is two-tier authority, so we had to go up to Lancashire County Council for highways, which added extra time and extra cost to what we were doing. So making sure that, again, that process is streamlined from the off is really important. We move on to the next slide. So in terms of the Net Zero Living funding, as you've seen, we've managed to learn by doing with the live three-house demonstrator project. On the back end, talking about the kind of non-technical barriers, we've looked through kind of the development of an 8-stage methodology to how you replicate this kind of nationally as you go, all the way from kind of initial conversations all the way to like operation and maintenance, and how it continues, looking at kind of that governance structure, kind of what that looks like, how the procurement works, how the finance sits, how all the contracting works. So all that's kind of in this methodology document. that's pretty hefty, loads of different bits and pieces. But the idea, essentially, is, as it says, we've established looped energy communities as a kit, a CIC, to essentially be that national delivery body that will support and kind of seed local development organisations, which keeps everything nice and local. So Looped will hold on to IP, will hold on to the methodology, and then develop these local organisations to take this forwards and develop and grow local skills and jobs as it goes. Slide, please. And then we just start with shoehorn this in just to kind of, I've mentioned it already, but making sure that the idea again around it is to make it as affordable as possible for people. So there'll be the cost of what, well, we need a better term for it, but the standing charge for the infrastructure, heat pump panels, etc., and fabric measures that go in on top of the energy bill, and then that will also work with the flexibility from the smart system, and then anything else that might be there as well in terms of generation pool from local tariffs or what it might be, and then that will kick out the cost to customer. And as I said before, the energy bill is ideally not going to be greater than what it was before. So, next slide, please. What's next? So we're looking to test the methodology and the tools that we've developed through Net Zero Living in the next phase of kind of development. And we're looking at how we do this in 3 areas. Continuing in Rossendale and Bridgend, who are our partner project on here in South Wales. And then we're also looking in Rochdale in Greater Manchester to see how we can kind of develop this in a new area. We've got the Network Innovation Allowance, where we're testing the smart local energy system, and that's being built currently. And then we're developing kind of all of this together to see how we can work forwards for kind of additional work with the DNO around flexibility and how we get this to work, the smart system to work at scale. I think that is everything from me. You move on to the next slide. I just think there's an info. I mean, make a note of it, or these slides will be circulated. But thank you very much, and pass back to Dinah.
Thank you, Andy. That was brilliant. I'll hand straight over to Alex at Bristol City Council, who's going to talk about the Mission Net Zero demonstrator project. Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, Dinah, and it's great to have the opportunity to speak today. Thank you very much to Innovate UK for that, and also, of course, for funding our demonstrator project. Yes, this is me. I'm the Climate Change Team Manager, and we lead Mission Net Zero. Here you can see our project partners. It's a multi-partner project covering the West of England region. In fact, not just Bristol. This was billed as a Bristol project, but it is the whole of the West of England. I've been asked to talk to you about how Mission Net Zero is contributing to strengthening communities. And so I'll give you a quick outline of what you'll hear from me. I'll start with an overview of the whole project, because it is doing more than only working with communities. So I'll do that and then talk you through some of those aspects of it which are particularly strengthening communities. Then I'll look at how we're bringing the work on the demand side of things together into portfolios. That'll make sense when I get to it. And finally, I'll wrap up with some reflections on what's been achieved and what next. So Sophie talked earlier about the Thriving Places focus on non-technological barriers. And Mission Net Zero aims to speed up Bristol and the West of England's transition to net zero by working with local people and organisations to address these 3 barriers to progress, which are demand, so what climate action do people actually want? Finance, if we know what they want, how do we find the money for those things? And supply, if we've got the idea of demand and the money, do we have the skilled professionals to do the work? And you need to do all of those things together because they're interlinked and also underpinned by having good data to use. So the project work packages, if I move on to those, really spun out from those 3 non-technological barriers. They relate to all of those. The project work packages are shown in green here, and they were complemented by existing work in the case of finance and demand, where you can see some dark blue circles. So at the bottom right, you can see we're already looking at ways to bring in innovative finance to climate work. And at the top right, we've got the Community Climate Investment Planning Work Package. And this work package held the majority of the community strengthening aspects that I'll talk about now. And this was complemented by city-level action planning and investment planning for Bristol, which had been done separately outside of the project. So you can see we've got work relating to those three non-technological barriers. So having given you that quick tour of the project, I'll zoom in to, thank you, that's great to move on, the climate investment planning at the community level. So the concept here was to produce 3 community climate investment plans. And this builds on Bristol's strong culture and history of climate and nature action across the public sector, communities and businesses. Previously, through funding from the National Lottery Climate Action Fund, our project partner, Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership, had already worked with communities across the city to produce their own community climate action plans. The plans set out the projects that communities wanted to see happen in their neighbourhoods. And Mission Net Zero took that baseline and went one step further. We worked with 3 communities who'd written these action plans to develop them with thinking about where the money might be found to put the plans into action. And the idea was that doing this would put us in a better position for the projects in these 3 plans to start to get the green light and move along into implementation post-project. The focus of the investment plans was on energy projects in particular, because when we began the project, the community interest was around really the energy crisis, cost of living crisis. So we worked with 3 community organisations, Knoll West Media Centre, Southmead Development Trust and Eastside Community Trust. And they worked to develop ideas around which community-based energy projects should be included in the Community Climate Investment Plan. And our project partner, Centre for Sustainable Energy, led the work to create the plans, draw those together. Each organisation has strengthened their existing climate action through Mission Net Zero by doing targeted community engagement and research. And the work to create the plans involved a series of events. But if we just pop back to that last slide, it shows a neighbourhood event at the Knoll West Spring Celebration. And so there were a lot of similar events in the 3 neighbourhoods. For example, they had workshops to really design the investment plan. They had an event on retrofit in all 3 places and a walking tour in all 3 places. But there was variety. So some places had a special edition of their magazines and some did door knocking to assess what interest there might be in the whole street retrofit. And each community organisation was supported to carry out one enabling study as well, a more in-depth piece of work to progress a particular project with potential for investment. So there was quite a range of project ideas, but the topics of street-based domestic retrofit, increasing skills, and maximising community wealth and the value of community assets, those 3 things came up consistently, and I suspect that you might find that in your places as well. Each community climate investment plan has a pipeline of projects behind it, and these are being included within a larger regional pipeline, which links to the financing aspect of the project. So moving on, we also, in addition to the investment planning, our project partner Bristol Energy Network supported people to become local energy champions, and this slide shows a blog on their website written by one of the champions. The champions come together to learn what they can do to improve the energy efficiency of their homes, learn about retrofit, low-carbon technologies, and then, like a kind of super user, they share their experiences with other local people to help them improve their homes. And we've completed 90 fully funded energy traces to assess what improvements can be made to people's homes through the project. And energy audits were also completed on 9 community buildings, with 4 of those being buildings in the 3 participating neighbourhoods. So there's been some very direct work on skills there. Beyond those 3 communities and the communities with existing climate action plans, we wanted to go further and support others who weren't quite at the same stage of advancement with their planning. So the project supported a targeted wider group of community organisations to build their capacity to begin climate action planning. And they held capacity building workshops. These were designed, tailored to the organisation's needs and run by our project partner, Bristol Climate and Nature Partnership. And I think in the introduction, we talked about positioning this work as a strategic enabler for communities. And I really believe that climate projects do have that capacity to bring wider benefits to neighbourhoods. But it does need to be explained and discussed, especially with organisations that maybe haven't already engaged with climate action. our project partners found that community organisations, sometimes they don't feel they've got the capacity or remit to get involved in action on energy or climate and nature until they can really make that link to their existing community concerns and challenges. So these workshops really help them to do this, but I would say don't assume that that is obvious to communities and community organisations. So going back now quickly to how we're bringing the work on demand together, we've written a regional climate investment plan which focuses on clean energy investment opportunities. We're seeing that as kind of the first chapter of a regional climate investment plan because the regional interest at the moment is very much on the clean energy side of things. And I talked about the pipeline of community projects being collected into a larger regional project pipeline. The reason for doing this is we believe that linking the projects into a big regional pipeline and presenting them as portfolios is a way to enable us to attract the private investment that we're told is available, and we're told typically operates at a very large scale and wants to make very large scale investments. So our regional plan outlines these 5 new portfolios under which projects can be clustered to match the topics and financial scale that's of interest to potential investors. And I won't read them out. You can see the portfolio names there in the green column. But the Communities Clean Energy Accelerator portfolio, number 2, would be the natural home for a lot of the community projects, but there's also the low carbon homes programme for the retrofit side of things. So finding the investment for these portfolios is what we intend to work on next to make all of the plans at regional, city and local community level come into reality. So reflecting back, we've created that immediate impact, which I've described in those 3 ways I've mentioned. The projects are being matched to investable portfolios. As we come to the end of the project, we're closer to having a pipeline of projects, including those proposed by the communities in their investment plans. And through arranging these into 5 large portfolios, we're aligning them more closely to the potential investment that we believe is available. That said, investment in climate action, it's a new concept and it's complex. Going out to investors isn't something we've all done much before. Is the model being promoted to cities like ours and regions like ours? But communities likely haven't been approached with those conversations before. So this is a lengthy conversation, and it's about both the what. So I talked a lot about demand, but it is also the how. We need to talk with communities both about what projects people want, but realistically, how do we do that? And if it is to be through large scale private investments, who takes the lead in finding that investment, who owns the investment plans and so on. There's a lot to get into and a lot to discuss, and assumptions can be rife. So it is a lengthy conversation. So what we're doing next is the final regional community climate investment plans will be issued by the end of the project, and work remains to formulate a governance and operational structure for the project partners to continue to work together on the regional clean energy investment plan after the project close. So yeah, it's very important to keep this momentum with the project and also the continuity of funding to community groups if possible, to retain the learning, keep the momentum whilst we work on developing the portfolios and obtaining the investment. That's all I was going to say. Thank you very much. It looks like we're moving on to the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That was brilliant. We've got some time for a Q&A now. We have a question that came to us via the chat. So thank you, Leah, from Cardiff Council. It's a question for you, Andy, on whether you have considered who would bear the risk if residents' bills are actually shown to be higher post-works and post-sign up to the Net Zero Terrace Street retrofit scheme.
Yeah, isn't it? It's something that we're looking through. I mean, the kind of building energy model and techno-economic modeling is something that we're doing, and defining kind of what these clusters look like at scale may well be defined on that kind of average energy bill going into kind of the cluster selection size. So it's something that we've definitely considered it as something that might happen. But we're looking at it that we wouldn't want to start rolling out in areas where modelling saying that bills will end up becoming larger. Part again of what we're looking to do with kind of the financial side is essentially get to a baseline with kind of that standing charge for want of a better term. We can't dictate people's usage date, kind of how they use their electricity in their home. That's something that they will have to kind of be responsible for and manage just as they are without upgrades like this. And then that kind of standing charge will then be an amount that will add on top and should from the modelling that we get data out of their properties from their smart meter should bring it down. But if their usage goes up, then that's kind of the resident will need to kind of have that. And we've got energy champions that sit alongside this as well that can help support people. If that ever does become the case, to get back to roots with how to use the system, how to kind of be properly energy efficient in the home and maybe see what's going on, and monitoring on the sides as well that are in the property will also kind of flag things as temperature might not be going up, but energy usage or electricity usage might be spiking, so that we can intervene and kind of help people before anything like that might happen.
So there's a couple of really important strands there of the ongoing support to individual households alongside the monitoring to detect where there are things that can be addressed directly through your energy champions and the wider project. Thank you, Andy. I've got a follow-up question still on Rossendale, which is around keeping residents on board throughout the process. What have you found to be the most effective way, Andy?
I touched on energy champs there, and I think that's pretty much it. We've had kind of that point of contact throughout the process for residents, and they've had somebody there to support them if they need it. And that's the plan going forwards as well, that there'll be an energy champion for a street, a cluster, to be that point of contact and friendly face that can support through the whole process that we're putting people through. And we found it's really important that there is a face to the project in front of people, because again, you don't want to turn up and kind of start doing work and there's contractors, and you don't necessarily, some people don't want to talk to contractors or they get a bit nervous. If that energy champ's on the street or around to support, then they can be that bridge and that person that can support through the whole process. And
are you scaling up the number of energy champs as you scale the number of houses?
That's the plan.
Yep.
I think we're in the kind of boss modelling. There's a number of properties assigned to a energy champion and an energy champion, so that we can scale that as we go, so that there'll be somebody for everybody.
Brilliant, thank you. And Alex, I have a question for you as well. Can you explain Bristol's Just Transition Declaration and how this has been included in the work of Mission Net Zero, please?
Yeah, so I think we may be a bit unique in having this Just Transition Declaration, but obviously we've got the Climate Emergency Declaration and we've an Ecological Emergency Declaration, but a group of activists created, they've been on a study trip and were inspired to create a declaration around just transition as well, which of course is essential to climate work. So we brought that into the project right from the start. We employed an inclusion advocate to support the project and be on the project board. And she helped put Just Transition Declaration into action, really, through the work. The Declaration in Bristol's got 10 principles in it, and people were very familiar with those. I'll put the link in the chat to it so people can see it. But it was, how do you make those principles come alive in reality? And people needed a little bit more confidence with that, I think, that we're working on the project. So the inclusion advocate helped with that, and she asked all of the work package leads to create ambitious goals for their work package and supported them to achieve those. So yeah, we've built that in. It's an important part of Bristol's scene. And then, of course, as I was saying, we went beyond those people that were already involved in the conversation. So not just working with those groups that had got community action plans already, but reaching out to others so that more capacity was built and you're not just working with people who are already in the loop.
Sorry, is she still involved as you're moving forward, Alex, the inclusion advocate?
Yes, she remains part of the project until the project closed, but I think we maybe needed support at that stage, but now we've learned. So she's been, teaching us to fish, as it were, and we should be all right, self-sufficient post-project.
Fabulous, thank you. We'll just move on to the final slide and what's coming up next. So as I said at the start, this is one of a series of 4. So this has been the kickoff session. The next webinar is on the 7th of January, same time, 12 till 1. We're going to be focusing on building capacity, creating partnerships and leveraging data. So really that's around what some of the demonstrator projects are doing to really scale the enablers of change so that they can work towards net zero at a faster pace and with even greater success as a result of being part of the Net Zero Living programme. We hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. We certainly enjoyed it from the organising team. Please do join us on the 7th of January. We will be sharing Eventbrite details very shortly for that. Please circulate them with friends, colleagues, and other organisations, partner delivery organisations who you feel might be interested, and put the future dates in your diary, Wednesday the 4th and Wednesday the 4th of February and Wednesday the 11th of March. All that's left for me to do is to say thank you ever so much to Sophie, to Andy and to Alex for their talks this afternoon, and to wish you a very good end of your week or end of Wednesday and an enjoyable week. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for joining. We'll just pop final slide on, which has got our contact details. If you have any further questions about this series, about our work at Urban Foresight, working with Liminal, or further questions about the Net Zero Living programme and the Future Ready service that we've delivered to the projects that have been part, then please do email us. It's future.ready@urbanforesight.com. Thank you ever so much, everybody. Goodbye.